I'm Ponsan Vichayaparit from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, who is the host of today's lecture series. And this QR code is the today's lecture slide. So if you like to have it, you can download from this QR. And for the program today, let me begin with introducing architecture and design for society, academic year 2025. This is an academic lecture series organized by the Faculty of Architecture, Chulalongkorn University. The series will be held regularly 1 to 2 sessions each month, and the feature distinguished speakers from various disciplines, both national and international. They will share their knowledge, insights, and experiences in design and research that address social issues and contribute to the betterment of the society. For participants who are licensed professionals such as architects and urban designers, each lecture attend and register to be eligible for professional development credits. มันสามารถเคลมเป็นหน่วยพวตได้นะครับสำหรับสถาปนิกอาชีพ And moreover, participants who attend more than 80% of our lecture during the first semester of 2025 academic year will receive a certificate of completion. And this certificate also allows participants to accumulate learning credits under the credit bank system, which can later be transferred toward degree programs at the Faculty of Architecture, Chulalongkorn University. So lastly, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Skun Thai Company, our sponsor, to kindly supporting these meaningful initiatives. สำหรับอีกครั้งนะครับสำหรับนักเรียนผู้เข้าร่วมทั่วไปนะครับที่เก็บเข้าร่วมนะครับในเลคเชอร์ซีรีส์นี้เกิน 80% นะครับสามารถออกมาคำนวณเป็นหน่วยของรายวิชาเป็นเครดิตแบงค์นะครับสำหรับสมัครเข้าศึกษาต่อในคณะได้นะครับ So I think this is a time for the opening session. So I'd like to invite our dean, Professor Salai Sapsup, to say something at the beginning.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and very warm welcome. On behalf of Faculty of Architecture, Chulalongkorn University, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our lectures, Architecture and Design for Societies lecture series. So this platform brings together distinguished speakers from Thailand and abroad to share ideas that inspire and shape the futures of our built environment. This evening, we are very honored to have with us Professor Dr. Wolfgang Scholz from the Research Groups of Regional Development and Risk Management Departments of Spatial Planning, TU Dortmund, Germany. His expertise expands resilient urban development, informal settlement, and infrastructure planning. Through this lecture, we hope to explore how climate adaptations in spatial planning can contribute to more sustainable communities and societies. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Departments of Urban and Regional Planning for hosting this event and Ajahn Ponsan for kindly serving as our moderator. So thank you for all of us to joining us, and please join me to giving a very warm welcome to our guest, Professor Dr. Wolfgang Scholz.
So before we go into the lecture, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Wolfgang Scholz from TU Dortmund. He's graduated in 1992 in spatial planning at TU Dortmund after working for private urban design studios in Germany for 10 years. He re-entered academia and received PhD in 2006 on informal urbanization in Tanzania. In 2012, he appointed as associate professor at German University of Technology in Oman. From 2014 to 2018, he served as a head of Department of International Planning Study in Dortmund. And from 2019 to 2020, he was a guest professor for international urban development at the Faculty of Architecture in Darmstadt. Currently, he conducts research on resilient urban development in Southeast Asia at TU Dortmund. And yes, we are so lucky to have him today because he is on the visit to Southeast Asia on the project that we work together for the GIZ, which is called Urban Act. So please give applause to our speaker today. Thank you. Okay, you can sit or you can.
Yeah, because otherwise. Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here. And actually, when I entered the building, I realized Chula is a world-class university. Do you know why? My mobile told me, because I was immediately connected to AD which only world-class university have, and using the very same Wi-Fi network, and you can use it in every other university, the world-class university only. And sometimes you struggle when you are somewhere else and you don't know the Wi-Fi connection, but with AD it works. Yeah, as said, we are working together in a GIZ-funded project. But today I will focus on something else, giving you some examples from Germany and the Philippines on spatial planning and options for climate adaptation. So first of all, I'm not an architect. I'm a registered town planner, so don't ask me for too much architectural details. And sorry that I will go also into legal aspects of urban planning. And I'm also using some of the slides from my colleagues in the project, Professor Greiving, Professor Birkmann, and also from my wife. So therefore, please excuse me for this, but they are also experts in this field. Okay, I will stand for a while because otherwise I have to always turn around to see what you see, and therefore standing is easier. Okay. Let's start with some general words about urban planning, also to reflect what we are. So actually, and this differs from architecture, obviously, urban planning has always two sides. It's a dualism between public and private, because most urban planners are employed by the public service. However, they deal with a lot of private small-scale and large-scale developers. It's a dualism between the government and the citizens, between public interests and private interests, and they might differ a lot. And when it comes to climate change adaptation, you interfere with private interests because you ask people to do it differently and sometimes even more costly, or reduce the amount of the building. What you like to do is to achieve the welfare for all, but actually you deal with families, with individuals, and they are mainly looking for the private advantages. Your tools, unlike architecture where you can produce nice design and someone else has to pay for the building, obviously, you are dealing with control and restrict from the point of view from the government. You tell a landowner you are allowed to do this, but not that. And on the other hand, you have the landowner who likes to do whatever they like to do with the land to maximize profit, to fulfill their wishes, and so on. I always compare the role of an urban planner and urban planning with, or land with a car. You can buy a car, you can buy land, no problem. But when you like to use a car, you have to follow some rules and compare it whether a landowner has to follow the same rules. First, you need a driving license. Do landowners have a license? Are they trained how to use land? Not really. They never have to go to a course before they can buy land. Private developers, they know how to use the land, but mainly to maximize profit. Then what else do you need? First a driving license, but you need an insurance, because your driving might hurt other people, other cars. When you transfer it to land use planning, it don't harm your neighbor or the neighborhood with your building, with your activities on your piece of ground. This is somehow hopefully secured by the urban planners, that they take care of setbacks, of pollution and so on. But it is our job and not the job of the landowner to take care of this. And then we have traffic regulations. We have one-way street, we have street lights, and this is also not given or left to the owner of the car, the owner of the land. It is also controlled by the government, by the municipalities, by the cities, by the national government. So therefore, everyone will understand why you have to stop at a red light, but with private developers, it's differently. Then it's about power relations and legal procedures. The legal procedures are more or less clear, however, sometimes very complicated and sometimes even contradicting. But in planning, there comes also the political side, power relations from politicians, but also from rich developers. So, and you as a small-scale planner, you are somewhere in between. So therefore, I say urban planning is not only a technical question or a design question, it's also a political question. And when you present your plan, other people might understand it totally differently. They think about the legal system, and you can present a nice design. Others say, how to construct this? It's not possible. Or, it costs a lot. I want to make money. And others see your simple, nicely designed plan in a more complex way and also reject it because it's not fulfilling all desires. And when it comes to climate change, actually it's not a new topic. We do environmental planning all the time, but it's getting more complicated now. So I will always put a question mark here. So you're not only dealing with land use distribution, what to put where, make a nice design, but actually the city is a very complex system of economic activities which you can stimulate but also restrict, which is not a good idea. You have different needs and expectations from the residents. Everyone has totally different ideas. What is a good life? You also have to consider technical and social services, which are run by the public sector in totally different departments, and they have their own idea of planning. And not to forget transportation, and sorry, that's why I was late today. It's not so far away, the hotel, but I stuck in the traffic. And last not least, the environment. So actually, it's quite complicated. Nowadays, when we do a nice design, we have a clear picture of the future. And from the first design in urban planning to architectural design to the construction and the use of the building, it takes years. But then the building will be on the earth for decades, even for 100 years. But what about the future? We know today somehow how it looks like today and maybe in 5 years. But the sooner we go into the future, there's a growing uncertainty. So we can deal with projections for demography, economic development, and then we deal with scenarios. What will happen if And then we have a lot of different options. And then we only deal with explorations. We think, okay, if it continues like this, and finally all are speculations. But urban planning, the city still exists, the buildings still exist. So, and when it comes to climate change, it's getting even more complicated. We have some calculations, but no one will know exactly the sea level rise in 50 years or the rainfall in 50 years. But we have to design the buildings already today like this. Not to talk about AI, which also will have an impact on your own profession. So, this is a self-definition of an association of urban planners. And we can say whether they cover all aspects. They say it's a universal human activity. Okay. Involving the consideration of outcome before choosing among alternatives. And this is actually what you do in urban planning and architecture. You have different options for the design, for the development of a city, of a building, and then you have some own criteria which might be the best one. And as a student, you might consider mainly aspects of design and maybe also to make your professor happy because your desire is to get a good grade. In real life, you have to consider also costs and the legal framework, which is not so favorable by the students. They say already correctly it's a technical and political process, this association of urban planners, and they are using the goals of welfare of people, control of the land use, design of the urban environment. Nice. We can add some more points. But where is climate change in this? You don't have to add it as a fourth point, but is it part of the welfare of the people, control of the land use, or design the urban environment, or is it everywhere? Or is climate change actually our daily business and we have now only a new brand for this? What we always have to consider is, like with the use of the car, whatever you do is an intervention in the freedom of the landowner or the holder for the of the land for the benefit of all. So whatever you do, you have to consider, okay, I might restrict someone, but the society, the neighborhood should benefit. So again, these are the main topics, and this is also the historical root of the profession: public interest, safety, security. We've started with the safety against fire and the safety of the construction itself, that it will not collapse, and we are based on legal procedures. The typical normal approach of planning is you have a goal, you define a problem, you analyze it, you design alternative solutions, and then you come up with a decision for one, and then you make the final design and it goes to construction. With all the uncertainties which we have now regarding climate change, it's already difficult to analyze the area properly because we don't know how it will look like in 50 years. What we can still keep are the primary functions of planning to make it more efficient, to balance public and private interest, enhance the quality of decision making, which is not your own taste, but for the benefit of the society, and then understand the community. That's something which we can keep. Well, there is a famous book from 1985 from Rittel and Weber describing the problems in urban planning. And they call it wicked problem. I don't know whether there's a proper translation into Thai. So actually it starts already with the problem, You cannot define it. When you get the assignment to design a new neighborhood, sounds easy. Someone is telling you 1,000 housing unit, that's the area, and you start design. But actually, for whom do you design? What are the consequences not only of the construction, but maybe of the transport network, because you are causing more traffic? What about the groundwater level of your construction? So actually it's getting more and more complicated, so you can actually not define it properly, or it will be a very long definition, and the definition is obviously not 1,000 housing units. There's no stopping rule. Once you have started, you cannot stop it, because it's not only you having full control what will happen. There are small-scale investors, later on the users, the residents, and whatever you design, it will look differently in future. And people are taking it over. Some residents will leave again, and you have tailor-made the design for this, and then newcomers come in, and they use it totally differently. So no stopping rule. You never have true or false solutions, like in mathematics. So you only have good or bad, and you are going to be trained now to look for the better and not the worst solutions. And you cannot test it. I always love the colleagues in other departments who can make an experiment. What will happen, and I will not do it, if I open my hand and everyone will know what will happen. It will fall down. We can calculate the speed and the time, and you can repeat it, it will be the same result. In our profession, we cannot test it. We cannot test with human beings, and we cannot test with the land, because once we have touched it, it's already changed, and we are dealing with other people's money. Every wicked planning problem is essentially unique. You cannot copy and paste one solution from one place to the other. Therefore, you have no one-fits-it-all solution. We can transfer some technical solutions from one place to the other, but not totally an entire neighborhood or a building. We don't have a countable set of potential solutions. If I ask you to design a neighborhood, we have now, how many? 80 in the audience, so you come up with 80 solutions. If we go somewhere else, other students will have some more. So actually, we will have a lot of different solutions to the very same problem. And unfortunately, if we start somewhere, every problem can be considered as a symptom of another one. Je digger, we deep. And we can explain it in a different way. It's important to explain it or to define it, because otherwise people will not understand it. And finally, we have not the right to be wrong, because we are dealing with other people's money, and we are dealing with other people's land, and actually we are dealing with residents. So, how to integrate climate change under these conditions where we have no clear numbers and figures, we only have predictions, but we actually don't know, because the system of the climate is even more complicated as an urban system. Yeah, maybe you know it from Facebook or other social media, the self-conception of planners. Some of your friends might think you're working only on a computer. Your parents might think you're famous on the construction site doing, and the nicely designed building will be implemented. The society is sometimes not happy with your interventions. Architects think actually what you are designing is just kindergarten. Only the real design of a building is. There's the same for architects, so don't worry. And you think you are securing the world, with other people's money, obviously, but actually you have to do a lot of paperwork, for example, if you work at DPT. So, how to deal with climate change in urban planning? It's a worldwide phenomenon. More rain, less rain. It's getting warmer, but what we need are local solutions, because only in the local climatic natural conditions, cultural conditions, availability of building materials and technology, and not to forget about the legal framework, it can be only implemented locally. How to address this big topic of climate change adaptation? In the last 10-20 years, a new concept came up that we translated into risk. So we are starting with a hazard, which might be heavy rainfall, a flood, storm, or whatever, even with earthquake, although it's not related to climate change. So you ask yourself, what type of harm is the area or the city or the residents expecting? So we are dealing with flood levels, square meter or flooded area. And then when we deal with the impacts, we have to ask ourselves, how badly are the people or the economy, the building is affected? Not every hazard has the very same impact. Maybe your building is strong enough, no problem. Maybe it's high enough, the ground level, flooding is not a problem. Maybe the people have an insurance covering the negative impact of the hazard, no problem. So therefore, the vulnerability highly depends on the site and who is affected. And then it's also about the specific location. So it's not everywhere it will have the very same impact. Therefore, we have to look for localized solutions. So this is a picture from IPCC, and it will be always updated, but the general picture remains the same. So, coming closer to Germany. So, obviously, our ministries are also thinking about this. And they do not only publish policy papers, but also guidelines and handbooks for the planners on the local level. So they are aware, planning under uncertainty. They ask us to deal with scenarios. If you cannot define it finally, then deal with future scenarios going in different options. Think about resilience, which is not only to have a strong building, but it is the way, if you disturb a system, let's say it goes in this direction, and then it bounces back. When is it back to the to the former situation? This is resilience. If it can achieve the former stage. Sometimes it remains outside the normal one, but that's something which we can calculate or guess what is the long-term impact. Then they also ask us to analyze vulnerability. Not everyone is affected in the same way, and we have to think about different kinds of people. For example, poor people or people living in an informal settlement are more vulnerable than other people. They ask us for flexible planning solutions. Sounds nice if the ministry is asking this, but planners are bound to the existing legal system, and this does not allow flexibility. It says yes or no, and you have to be inside the legal system. They ask for small-scale local strategies and something which means no regret solutions, which means try it out. test it on the local level whether it's working or not, but always consider it should not harm other people or the environment, but simply do something, contribute a little bit. Don't look for the final best solution, because there will no final best solution. We do have to live with contradictions. Every transport planner will tell you we have to look for dense urban structures which allows public transport. The environmentalist will also tell you let's go for a dense urban structure and leave open space outside Bangkok free from construction. Sounds nice. But at the same time, you have a higher degree of ground ceiling, 100%, and it will cause more urban heat if you have a higher density of the building. So it's a contradiction. And when it comes to heavy rainfall, and you will have more urban flooding because there's no space where to leave the water inside the city. So this contradiction might be sorted out by the nice term of compact settlement structure or compact urban development, but it does not mean automatically dense. It also means there is space in between for the water to go, there's space for the wind to allow ventilation, so it is quite difficult to design it in reality. Okay, now it's getting a little bit boring for you because I have to refer shortly to the planning system in Germany, which is totally different from the one in Thailand. So always keep in mind how the Thai system is working and compare it. So we do have planning on the federal, on the national level. However, we don't have plans on the national level. We only have guidelines. Planning starts on the federal state planning level. Germany consists of 16 federal states. Like the US, they have 50. They have their own legislation, they have their own planning law, and they have their own plans. That's due to historical reasons. And they do regional plans. Don't mix it up with the term regions in Thailand. It's something totally different. Our regions are smaller than yours. So inside the 16 federal states, they have 2 to 5 regions. And then we do have local planning. So that's a planning pyramid, but it doesn't start on the top because the national level has no plans. But we have other influential partners planners have to consider and also to follow. These are, for example, those public companies dealing with infrastructure like railway or power supply, or also environmental association as long as they are a legal body. So they have to be heard and integrated in the planning process on all levels. And then we do have sectoral plannings, other departments who are dealing with landscape planning, transport, where to put the motorway, the railway, nature conservation, because it might go beyond the boundary of one region or state, energy and water, and large-scale industries. So they always influence the planning system. And this system means the local plans depend on the regional plan, has to follow it, but also they influence the regional plans. So actually they are sitting together and fight, but they have to produce sooner or later a joint agreement. So, totally different from Thailand. In Germany, we had no national state. We only had independent municipalities and many kingdoms. So urban planning obviously starts at the city level, and the cities are by constitution independent and the main actor for urban planning. They are responsible and they have the freedom to plan. However, they have to follow the guidelines from the state level, and they tell them how to plan and what to plan in terms of following the regional plan. But not going into details like here in Thailand, where DPT has an office in every municipality doing the land use plan. This is not the same. So therefore we have to have a look and then to understand where actually we can have entry points for climate change adaptation. We can discuss it later on, but please note, every planning system has its own logic. There's no good and bad. So as long as the planning system in itself is logic, functional, and efficient, it's fine. You can have a top-down or a bottom-up approach. It doesn't matter as long as you have enough professionals to do a good job. Based on the distribution of the population and the economic centers in Germany, we have on the federal level a fundamental principle how to distribute public functions and how to distribute our population. So you can have some model of concentration, putting everything into the capital, and then you have a large-scale periphery. This applies mainly to countries where the capital is 10 or 20 times larger as the next second largest city. And then what will happen? The city is getting bigger and bigger, and sooner or later it's not an efficient city anymore, and the countryside has no development. You can also go for decentralization. If you have a big country and you have a lot of cities, then every city can develop on its own and be the center of the surrounding. It might work, but you need an equal distribution of economic powerhouses all over the country. It might work in the US because it's a big country and every area has its own specific. What we do in Germany is we call it decentralized concentration. We do have big cities, actually 10 cities having 500,000 inhabitants, and only 3 cities above 1 million. So it's actually equally distributed, and we say development should only take place in these cities and in corridors between these cities, which means you can have accessibility by motorways and railways. And then the final dream looks like this. Actually, it's difficult to achieve, but you can always say, please here no development because there is no railway. Leave it to agriculture, nature, or whatever. There is a theory behind, a theory coming from geography from the 1930s, where a professor called Kristalla, he was a geographer by profession, he developed the theory of central places. The idea is there is a system behind on the distribution of cities as a core for development, and other areas have only villages. And his idea is there's an independence between a city and the surrounding region. There's a hierarchy of functions and market range. which means you always need enough customers or clients to run your facility, whether it's a shopping mall, a hospital, or a university. You always need your customer and clients. And therefore, you need a certain distance between these facilities. Otherwise, they have a too high competition, and they might die because of not enough economic activities. And the idea is to to make the very same structure like developers of shopping malls are applying to distribute the population. We do have an order in the cities, and I think you have something similar in Thailand, where you have cities of smaller cities and bigger cities with more functions, with more responsibilities, with more development options. And we say we have low order, medium order, high order. Quite simple, 3 categories. And the low order settlements should provide only basic service like primary school, a small hospital, that's all, never a university, because it might attract too many residents. In a medium order you can have it, and a specialized hospital, and only in the few high order settlements you have to provide all, not only for your own residents, but also for the surrounding. This is the picture, how it looks like. The higher order city A is covering all the red area. The B is covering the yellow area, and then we have the small scale covering only the basic needs. Obviously, which looks like a mathematical model, but there's something behind, like the 50-minute city, that everything should be in walking distance here, but only the basic service, that transport is, or commuting is reduced, and that we don't have an oversupply of services in the big cities, but rather have many big cities, but not too big. It looks nice, perfect, but you are dealing not with a bare piece of land. You have already the reality, so it's difficult to achieve. However, it's a guiding principle on the national level. And when you look at the reality in Germany, we do have these high order centers, which are the red dots. We have many of them, but the idea is to equally distribute them and not to have areas underserviced. Actually, some areas are lacking some of the red ones, but the idea is, if you deal with public money, you invest in universities, in hospitals or whatever, go to the red one and make sure that you have enough blue dots around to service them. And if you have a lower population, obviously the commuting distance are longer or higher, and some economic powerhouses like Frankfurt, which is here, it's more concentrated, but this is the general guideline on the federal level to distribute public funds. They are producing on the national level some nice, not maps, not plans, graphics, and very generalized. But this is how they channel public funds. The overall goal is equivalent living conditions, a sustainable spatial development, whatever it means, safeguard natural resources, apply the concept of central places, positive conditions for economic development, for example, around an airport, a harbor, because that's something you cannot easily shift, and secure territories with special relevance. In former times it was mainly for mining, but nowadays with climate change, also areas for windmills, for energy productions pop up, because you don't have everywhere the same wind. So we have now the problems in the north. We have a lot of wind, so we produce power, energy, but we have the factories more in the south, so we have to transport the electrical power from north to south. I said no plans on the national level. Only two aspects came into the law, and this is climate change adaptation and renewable energies and grids, because they realized climate change is something which is so important, we have to sort it out on the national level and also spend national money. And for renewable energies, in former times, you have a power plant by coal, oil, or gas. You produce your power locally, and it will be used around. If you have a company producing steel, you need a lot of power, so you put your company, your fabric close to the energy source. With windmills and solar energy, it's getting totally different. So the national government said, no, because of climate change, it is now in our hands, and we are securing the lines from north to south. I mentioned the term resilient, and you will also find the download link for the English document. It's a policy paper, but it explains well what is actually a risk-based approach for planning. So how to deal it, how to implement it, and actually what does it mean to assess vulnerabilities of the population and to forecast future risk. And these general documents also something which you can apply here in Thailand. They also, because we are dealing with money and we cannot solve all problems, they introduce a nice term, protection worthiness, which means not everything, not everyone will be saved. They have to have a hierarchy, what is so important that it has to be secured, and what we can forget about. I'm not talking of human beings and loss of life, but of infrastructure which can collapse and be damaged, because you cannot sort them out all. And they introduce a term which is called critical infrastructure, which means the infrastructure like power, which has an impact on other important infrastructure. Without power, the hospital will not run. They don't have power. Okay, the hospital has a generator for some hours, but what about water supply? Is water supply working without energy? No. Okay. So therefore I put the link. Flood protection is something which you cannot solve on the local level, not even on the regional level. Flood protection was also taken over by the national government because the river is quite long, same situation here in Thailand. If you have rainfall in the north, sooner or later you will have flood here in Bangkok. But where to solve it? Where to put a dam? Where to allow the water to flow agricultural land before it hits Bangkok? That's something you have to decide on the national level. And therefore, they start with the European level, because our rivers are crossing different countries, to sort it out on the national level. It came out now with the need for climate change adaptation, because they realized, oh, we will have more and more floods, so better work together. And they, for the first time, it's our first national flood protection plan. Before we had none. And also it's about the harmonization of different measures. So your tie system with top-down from the capital sometimes is better, because for us it was the first time. So this is how it looks like. So how is planning going on the local level? We do have 2 guiding legal books guiding the planning on the local level: the Federal Building Code and the Federal Land Use Ordinance. On the local level, actually, we have 2 plans: a citywide preparatory land use plan and a legally binding land use plan for smaller areas. The municipalities can plan whatever they want, as long as they follow the guidelines, what they are allowed to plan and what not, and the regional plan. So they have to follow in each plan these aspects. It has to be in line with the regional plan. So if the regional plan says it will be agriculture, they cannot establish a residential area. Social-oriented land use, which means don't give the land to rich developers looking only for rich apartments. You always have to consider some social housing in between. It should follow public interest and so on. But the red one is important. Only since 2011, climate change adaptation and mitigation is part of the goals for each plan. And this is important because with these plans, you are, and I'm coming back to one of the first slides, you are interfering in the land use of individual landowners. You tell them what to do and what not. Before, okay, follow the regional plan, everyone will understand. But climate change and adaptation and mitigation might be costly for each developer. They have to pay for solar powers and panels and so on. So since it is in the law, it can be applied in the legal binding layout plan for each developer. And what is not listed, you as a planner cannot put into the plan. That's also the legal principle. What is not in the traffic regulations, the policeman cannot stop you because it is not a crime if you do this. The regional plan looks like this. Quite broad, but already showing you some colors. For green, for the no urban development, red for urban development, securing some important features like a harbor, which cannot be shifted somewhere. And it deals with priority areas for windmills, energy production, large-scale factories, and so on. This is agreed on different levels of the state. And when we go to the next picture, it might recall you to some of the pictures before. This is the regional plan for the city of Stuttgart. And you will see, oh, we have some dots along lines. So this is the application of the central place model in real-life planning. So no development in the rural areas, and mainly development where we have already infrastructure. And you know it's easy to expand a motorway or a railway, but it's difficult to build a new line, as long as it is not underground. On the local level, the color seems to be the same, and actually they are the same, a little bit more detailed, some kind of red colors, and they are securing residential, mixed use, traffic lines, commercial centers, and they do it every 15 to 20 years. They have to update, they have to establish a new one from scratch, but they can always update it. It is decided by the city council. It is not decided in the capital. And it is a public process to develop it. And this is downloaded from the website, unfortunately in a bad quality. But so everyone can contribute to this plan. But more important is the last one, the legal binding layout plan, because here you see an existing area and a new area, and for each plot there are some land uses, what is allowed, what is not allowed. It does never display architecture, which means you can build your house, but how the building looks like, it's up to the architects and the landowner. They only have some urban design principles like the red line, the facade of the building has to follow this line, so every building is in the same line. To the back, leave some green space open, but the rest is only dealing with plot coverage and floor space ratio. I think you are doing the same here. But for urban design or for heritage aspects, you can even fix the color scheme of the facade, the percentage of the openings, which means the windows and the door against the facade, the total wall, and also technical infrastructure. This has been in place for a long time, and landowners are crying. But now with climate change, since 2011, we can add on top some more restrictions or obligations regarding climate change. It is also decided by the city council, is a local law, so no time limit. It's legally binding for landowners and developers, and it is going through a participatory approach. It can be questioned at court, and it happens quite often. And if you change it, let's say from building land to green, or you reduce the number of floors, the landowner can go to court and ask for compensation. So therefore it's a lengthy process, and you as a planner, you have to be sure that you are not punished at court or your municipality. Okay, this is the German planning system, but we actually have other tools which are more tailor-made for climate change adaptation. And the question to you is whether you have something similar in Thailand. Everyone knows the environmental impact assessment, which is on the project base. This has been established first in the US in the 1990s, and then it spread all over the world, and every country is doing this. It's easy to assess the impacts of a project because the project is already designed, so you know how it will look like. But the EU was also asking for something which is called strategic environmental assessment, which is not for projects but for plans, which is more difficult. We also have a new tool in our building code. You see it's paragraph 4C, since 2007, where you can tailor-made for climate change adaptation, you can add something on the list what planners are allowed to do. And then also 2007, you have some more detailed options. So here you see in the plan you have some more green area, and the green area was before. Let's leave it to the landscape architects how they design it. But nowadays we are using open spaces in a multifunctional way for retention, for cooling. So it's not only some green, it has a technical function as well. So starting with the first one, and then I'm also done. The strategic environmental assessment started in 96 at EU level. 5 years later, it came into the German law, and then it has to be translated into the Federal Building Code. It takes always some time, because what the EU thinks is general, but then it has to be translated into the legal system. And actually the advantage is that we have a well-established system of an EIA, how to do it, starting with screening, which means what kind of impacts might happen. Screening is thinking out of the box, but we know already from the EIA how to do it. Then we have a scoping and early participation of all administrative bodies. Well established, we only have to apply it for plans. And then something totally new for German planners, monitoring. They never do monitor their plans. They think they are perfect, and maybe they change it if need it, but they do not monitor it regularly. So therefore, the EIA is a well-established tool and works well. Urban planners hate it because it's extra work, and sometimes even the very same word, the very same analysis, but the report has a different structure, different words for the very same issue, so it's an extra burden for them. More interesting is the other thing is when you do planning, you have a clear goal to achieve and you are dealing with foreseeable impacts. Let's say a new neighborhood will cause traffic. The road will cause sealing of the soil. It will have, all your development will have an impact on the groundwater level. You are producing more sewage and so on. So that's something you can calculate simply by looking at your plan and the number of residents. But this new paragraph is dealing with unforeseeable negative impacts. Oh, if it is unforeseeable, how to get them? But at least you have to sit down and think about this, and also early intervention measures. And the early intervention measures means you have your plan, which is a local law, but if you identify unforeseeable negative impacts, you can say the landowner, sorry, when we did the plan, we were not aware of this, but now we know, and you have to justify it. Sorry, you are not allowed to construct your building like this anymore. We have to reduce your plot coverage. Now it's possible. It costs some money, and you have to justify it, but before it was not possible to take back the building rights on private land. So therefore, that's very important. It is not yet used so much because the planners and the municipalities are afraid. Maybe the landowner is going to court and is questioning your justification and is asking for money, or it will be a lengthy process, and if you as a municipal officer will lose a court case, your mayor will not be happy. What we also have since the 2011 adding of climate change adaptation and mitigation on the Federal Building Code on the very highest level, now planners can add a lot of restrictions, demand for each building regarding green infrastructure. It's not only green roofs. It's also, for example, the calculation that all your rainwater on your plot is not going into the sewage system, but has to be connected to a temporary retention area, which is usually a playground, and then it will be flooded for 1 or 2 days, and then the water is gone. So first you have multifunctional land uses. It's not green anymore. It's green and blue and a special sign for the retention area. but to force the landowner to have the pipe from the building towards this playground, that's something which you have to secure legally. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Also, replacement of existing urban vegetations in case of loss. We see here so many trees which are dying, even in the public area. But this means you have to replace it. It might die, it can happen, that's nature, or it can be damaged. But you have to replace it. So we do have example how it is applied in new design concepts, which means we are calculating the impact of greening a courtyard by heat maps. So you do the calculation how hot it is without green and with green, and if the impact is good enough, is high enough, then you have a justification to let the landowner plant the trees. You can not only on the building level, but also how the buildings are exposed to sun, to the ventilation. It has a high impact. It might not be the best urban design concept anymore, but it is climate change adaptation that you respect also these functions of cross ventilation, green roofing, green facades. You can use existing tracks like former railway tracks. You can use artificial lakes as retention areas, also for leisure activities. The only problem is it doesn't look always nice, because sometimes the water level is low, sometimes it's very high, but that's something we have to accept when it comes to climate change adaptation. What we also do now is think about thermal comfort. So in Germany we don't have AC, not yet. So we are hoping for, we are looking for ventilation. So you calculate the existing one against the future heat inside and outside the building. There are some guys who can do it. And then you add green. And what kind of trees especially. And then you can make a calculation how it looks like with intervention. We don't have to understand all these. But you see, we have different colors. So we have a reduction of the heat, and therefore we can implement it. We have some areas where we have positive effects, which means a lower temperature. And then it goes into the law because we have in the plan because we have a justification. What we also can do is, if we are close to a flood-prone area, somewhere the people have to live. But we have a calculation of the flood level, of the hazard intensity, and then we start to think about how to avoid it by retention areas inside the building land. The exclusion of vulnerable uses, for example, a home for elderly, which cannot run away, no kindergarten because they don't follow the rules. But other residential uses you can make as long as you have an early warning system and you have details like the power supply to the house is not on the ground floor but on the first floor. You have security measures for your sewage system that it is blocked and no water comes in and then up. So all these technical details are available, and then it can be translated. Here it applies, here not, because it's a more safe area. It's simply 1 meter higher. Or you look at the ceiling and see what kind of materials you are using. So obviously different kind of stones react differently to the solar radiation. So some are getting hot and some are getting less hot. So that's something you can calculate, and also the amount of green space, and then the impact how it looks like. Sometimes simply grass will help a lot already. That's another example. So here it looks more technical how it works. So the green roof is obviously reducing the temperature. You can also have a rooftop pool that has the same impact. Then you have to store your own water below the building, and then it should flow to irrigate the open spaces. The idea is always to reduce the peak of the rainfall flood. 6 hours is enough, and then or of the high tide, and then it can go into the normal system. And you can also use it for the irrigation of the public green. And you will see private roof, private rainwater, public irrigation. That's something you have to have the legal power to tell the people how to do it. In the moment, everyone's thinking only on their own plot. That's a picture of we are trying to design an entire neighborhood now with, for example, green space as temporary flooded area. So it is not always green. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's muddy, but only a few days. So it works. Also parking space, there's no need to seal it with tarmac or stones. It can be half green, half stone. You can use rooftops for the residents for recreational area and a cool breeze. You can you can store water temporarily on top of the roof just by using different materials and then release it later on to the sewage system. Okay, lessons learned from Germany. The right of the municipalities to have their own plans on their territory is not only chaotic, but it has also the advantage that you have localized approaches from local experts, maybe a mayor who is in favor of this. You can test many solutions, and it has a wider range of options together, and then between the municipalities, the people can learn from each other. They can see it. You can travel there. I'm always traveling with my students to other places to let them see. Strong regional planning guides the urban development and is supporting, for example, transport-oriented development along existing transport lines. Policies on climate change adaptation are only powerful and restrictive to landowners if they are integrated in the legal system. A policy paper itself will not help. It has to be part of the law. The cities must be supported by the national agencies. They are providing the data for free. Not only the municipalities, but the data are also available for the public. So before you buy a piece of land, you can check the hazards, the flood level, and so on, not only the land price and where's the next motorway. So that's important that data are available for free. And then you can play around with tools like EIA, transferred as strategic environmental assessment, and add risk-informed and forecast planning. So climate change adaptation is still a challenge because we have other problems like urban growth, demographic changes, economic challenges, but it is possible if we do it wisely, and there's not so costly if we do it integrated from the beginning. Now time is over. Actually, this is the last slide. I skipped the other example from the Philippines, but you have it when you download it, you have it anyway. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Wolfgang Scholz for a very interesting and impressive presentation. So this is time for questions and answers and some comments from the audience. If you have some, you can raise your hand. Okay.
As you have already seen before, an urban planning in Bangkok is already have a lot of problem from the beginning, like it was made by individual, not the government. So could it be possible to solve the problem with the less effort to the resident?
Can you? Okay, so you're talking about the planning in Bangkok. Okay, and the question was?
Could it be possible to solve the problem in the Bangkok planning with not rebuild the new one?
Well, Bangkok is a case of a very big city, actually the metropolitan area. So the first starting point is, on the long-term perspective, is support your secondary cities and reduce the growth of Bangkok. So that's the first approach, that other cities should grow and not concentrate all in Bangkok. But those who are living already here, unfortunately, the location of Bangkok in a flood-prone area close to the ocean along a river is already a problem which you cannot solve in Bangkok alone. Otherwise, you have to elevate all buildings, and that's too costly. So one thing is to look upstream, to sort it out along the river, not to have water flowing into Bangkok. And on the other side, the Netherlands do it with a flood protection gate to the ocean, because if you have a heavy rainfall on high tide, where should the water go? So they close the river so that the sea water cannot enter the city anymore. This is really expensive. Inside Bangkok, I think actually the city is working quite well because it's decentralized. You have a lot of city center sub-centers wherever you see the high-rise buildings. And that's already a good approach. You protect your heritage, also fine. The problem is, I think the biggest problem is transport, that people live somewhere and work somewhere else, and this is not in 50 minutes, it is far away. So that's something you can only sort out with a better public transport system. You have the metro system already, elevated and underground, but maybe not enough. And this is quite expensive to build new, but that's the only option if you deal with such a big city. But I don't know what was actually your intention, in which direction.
You have already answered my question.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, upstairs. Could you please come down?
Do you have a suggestion about developing green space along public transportation station in Thailand?
I haven't got it.
Sorry, please say again.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion about developing green space along public transportation station in Thailand?
Green space development
About TOD.
along, public transportation,
Okay. There must be an idea behind your question, because usually I would say along public transport lines I would go for dense residential development. So on which scale are you on the citywide scale or are you on the level of street design?
I don't know.
So obviously on the street design level, for example, open spaces and green help. But more important is to have along public transport many residential and many working places, and obviously not green. It should be then somewhere else. Close inside the neighborhood, obviously in walking distance, but not necessarily along a bus station.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Maybe one or two questions, comments.
First of all, thank you for your very methodical presentation. So one of the things I noticed is in your introduction it said you have experience with working with informalities, and that is on the one hand, and in the other hand you have showed how the system in Germany is working, like everything is written down, it's so much codified. So my question was, how do these plans or these policies deal with informalities? Are there any scope for addressing them? And if there isn't in the plan of Germany for accommodating informalities, how do you think that may play into policies like that in places such as maybe India or Bangladesh?
Okay, thanks a lot. Officially, we don't have informal developments in Germany. In reality, we do have, but in a different way. So since we don't have informal settlements, because the landowner makes sure that no one is constructing on the piece of land and he is calling the police. And no one is taking the risk to invest in a construction which might be demolished. So the planning offices have fully control on the land uses, which are these colors. However, in the long run, when you look at this existing one, you see a main building and a smaller building which is a garage. The garage might be part of the plan, is calculated in the plot coverage. But everywhere in Germany, it will happen that they extend the building to the back with a longer garage, which you are using also for your material which you use in the garden, because it's actually quite comfortable. And you don't need an architect to extend a building. You can do it on your own. People are extending the terrace, roofing the terrace, because they like shadow or go out in the winter when it's raining. This is not visible from the street, so the officers cannot see it. They are not using Google Earth as a legal tool to check what's going on the ground. They only go out if a neighbor is complaining. But if the neighbor is doing the same, they find an agreement, everyone is happy. We do have a law in some areas that you have to pay for the rainwater based on the amount of sealed areas of your ground. And then obviously they will never tell the officers, I've extended my terrace, because they have to pay more. So it happens. We also have something informal land use changes. We do have something which we call allotment garden. So people lease a piece of land from the municipality to do gardening. They do have a small hut maximum 20 square meters, and 1/3 of the land can be sealed, 1/3 is for agricultural production, which can be apples, and the other for recreation, to let your children play. It is a social system for those people who are living in a dense inner city and cannot have their own garden. It is usually on land which is not suitable for residential areas because it is along a motorway, a railway track. It is maybe too hilly and so on. So these areas are exactly the areas which attract informal settlers in other countries. We have already secured the land by these allotment gardens. However, the people stay overnight, and if it is not well controlled by the municipality, sooner or later it shifts into a permanent or temporary residential area without being connected to the sewage system, without not having enough electrical power to cover the area, no parking space, and so on. So these informal land use changes we also have. We have informal developments with overcrowding of rental spaces, because how to control it? So we do have it, because it's part of normal urban development, but not when it comes to land uses.
Thank you.
So my research on informal settlements in Asia and also in Africa deals with the very same legal system, however with not fully control of the municipality on the land uses, because the landowners are also attracting informal settlers, because with informal settlements you can make more money than with agriculture. So they pay some money to them. It's not always public land. But the issue is what to do with informal settlers. They are voters, they are citizens, they have their right, and if you demolish them, the buildings, you as a government, you have to provide other housing. And therefore, some governments close the eyes, others, like in Thailand with Cody, they develop alternatives, but something has to happen.
Interesting to hear about that informal settlement in Germany. Yeah, I can have imagined before.
Informal land use changes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe the last question.
You mentioned earlier that we should kind of move from Bangkok. Do you suggest moving to neighboring cities or under another city which is more far away while considering the flood situations? Thank you.
Okay, already by your wording, I realize you don't like to leave Bangkok because everything else is far away and therefore not desirable for you. So I have to go back to the principle. It's quite slow, sorry. No. The best way always to reduce transport and also to allow economic growth is a decentralized concentration. Which means if everything is in the capital, then the capital is becoming too expensive. Simply because it's not efficient to have a city as big as Bangkok. Everyone feels it. It's not only the land price, it is also your daily commuting costs in terms of time. If the very same people would be distributed equally among Thailand, it would be better, and it would also tap the economic potential from these secondary cities. They can grow, they have potentials, but they are untapped. So I'm still looking for the right slide. This is the better approach. However, you cannot tell the people to move. Everyone is moving there where you have your best living conditions and a good life for your family and a good job. So first you have to transfer the jobs out of Bangkok somewhere else, which means attract companies to go outside Bangkok. And outside means really to another town, because otherwise Bangkok will grow and grow. I have to look for the slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, he's still here with us, so if you have any more questions, you can ask him personally after this. So thank you again for your presentation and also for our audience participation today. The today's topics lecture is directly connected to SDG 11 and SDG 13, which address sustainable cities and community and climate action. It provides a valuable starting point for us to reflect on what needs to be done in Thai context. We can ensure that our cities and community remain resilient and livable amid the growing impacts of climate change, which inevitably affect us all.